Hello everyone, this is Tom from Los Angeles. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to do a tag since it's Tuesday, and it's a tag that's been created by Brandon at Brandon's Bookshelf. I've known online, known Brandon only recently because his channel is fairly recent, but he's got a really infectious passion and enthusiasm for his reading, for his books. I am also following him on Goodreads. I think he's got great taste, and I've even done this funny analysis that you can do on Goodreads when you compare books, and Goodreads gives you a graph made of two circles that overlap. That was really fun. And we have quite a good overlap between what Brandon has read and what I have read. Even our rating was kind of similar. So thanks a lot, Brandon, for creating this tag. It's actually 20 questions, so I'm going to try to be as quick and concise as I can. This is the philosophy of reading tag. Question 1. What's most important, a good character, plot, or message? If there is a message, in my opinion, that is the most important thing about any type of writing, because I see writing as communication, and the most important part of any type of communication is the message, if there is something that the author means to say. Very often there is no message. There is an adventure, a science fiction story, Wilbur Smith type of story, and so I enjoy the book for what it is, mainly for the plot, personally, rather than the character. The character is important, but in my hierarchy, I would say the least important out of message, plot, and character. Question 2. Should one read books about ideas or opinions they disagree with? Absolutely, yes, certainly. And there are many ways to do this. There are many ways to in a sense, it's a challenge. It's the type of stimulation that I'm personally looking for. However, especially when it comes to macro categories, like, for example, politics, religion, where we human beings have many of our basic disagreements, there is a lot of there's a lot to say about the fact that there is a weak way to disagree and there is a strong way to disagree. There is a not very intelligent way to disagree, and there is a very intelligent and clever way to disagree. So let's make an example. If I'm thinking about religion, I am very often looking for Christian books, Catholic books, etc. But I also love to hear strong books about atheism and agnosticism. So I'm actually proactively looking for those type of books, as long as they're strong, as long as they promise to be meaty and clever. I think a perfect example of that would be Ludwig von Feuerbach, who I consider a very strong example of atheism and criticism against Christianity. He's still wrong, but it's a very strong and clever and also deep type of criticism. In fact, I think many famous atheists like Freud, Marx, Nietzsche took a lot of their inspiration from Feuerbach. So that I would respect a lot. An example of weak, or even worse than that, atheist type of books are, for example, Richard Dawkins. Those I don't have any respect for. I read a couple, and I won't read any more of them. So I hope this is clear. Number 3, as tech advances, what do you think will be the role of books? Well, I'm really convinced that books are here to stay. I'm optimistic about books as a physical object. We've had them for thousands of years. Their materials change, and the materials probably will change in 200 years or in 500 years. We probably won't be making books out of paper using trees. We'll use some other type of material, but I think the physicality of it won't be lost. Together with the books in parallel, there will be many other ways to exchange information, to consume literature, So that's my, let's call it, optimistic prediction for the future. And number 4, how important are summaries, review, and art in your book choosing? Well, so the summaries are not very important because very often I don't really read them. Either I get to a book because of a booktube review, or I go in blind because I like the title and I like the cover, as weird as this sounds. Which takes me to the third party. Art in my book choosing is actually important, very important. I know how irrational it is because many horrible books have wonderful covers and you should never judge them by their covers, but I do. I do judge books by their covers a lot, and I love to enjoy a book that has a very beautiful artistic work or even picture, whatever it is, on the cover, because it's very evocative, because it puts me in a certain mood. I've also noticed how culturally different countries have a different attention and care and quality for their book covers. And in the Anglo-Saxon world, UK, US, I think there is a very high, in fact, I believe in the UK, more than in the US, I found really creative book covers, really pleasant to look at book covers. And to me, they do make a difference. Reviews are important, but I tend to read reviews only after having read a book. Question 5, should one ever skim or scan a book? Well, skim or scan, if it means that you're not reading the entire book but only pointers or bullet points or whatever, then no, because it wouldn't be fair. However, if it's for one of those books that you read because you have to read, I don't know, for work, for business, then yeah, absolutely, that's completely legitimate. If it was for your own enjoyment, your own edification, enjoyment, enrichment, I don't think you should skim or scan. And I speak from the point of view of a slow reader, so it's not something I do. I enjoy reading slowly. Number 6, should reading always be enjoyable? Well, yeah, enjoyable in different ways. Enjoyable in a fun, lighthearted way, in a deeply joyful way. Like, for example, if I read the Divine Comedy, that's deeply joyful for me, not fun and lighthearted. Or if I read theology, if I read history, generally speaking, it's very enjoyable, but it requires a bit more effort. So there are different degrees of effort, but it should always be enjoyable for me, with very, very rare exceptions of situations where you have to read something, once again, for work, because it's part of your job. In my personal case, that doesn't happen much. Number 7, is it important to be well read? This is interesting because sometimes there is a bit of a sense of elitism that goes with the idea of somebody who is well read. And so, especially nowadays, you would say, well, I value the opinion of somebody about any type of topic more because they are well read versus somebody else who is not as well read. However, here I have a however to say as well, because I really think in our day and age, we have far too many opinions, all of us, including myself, I'm including all my friends. We have far too many opinions. We feel entitled to have opinions about anything, even just because we have read 5 books about the topic. It doesn't make us an expert, but we feel like we are experts if we've read 5 books about a topic. So I in some occasions, I would say it's more important to have the courage and the self-awareness to say, I don't know about a topic, rather than being well-read about a topic, if that makes sense. I try to do that myself when somebody is asking my opinion. I don't know enough about this to have an opinion, even if maybe I'm well-read from a relative standpoint. And I hope this makes a little sense. Then number 8, what is your book buying process? It varies wildly, because I'm buying books in English and I'm buying books in Italian, about 50-50. And living in California, of course, in order to buy books in Italian, I have to make those orders online. So for what concerns those books, I have to make a few, the lesser amount of orders because it costs to ship them over. And so I make maybe one order of Italian books every 3 or 4 months. In the meantime, I keep browsing the internet and searching and kind of building a cart. I use an Italian website that's called IBS Italia, Internet Bookshop Italy, or some other Italian bookstores. For my English books, I like to go around Los Angeles. There are a multitude of beautiful secondhand bookshops here, Iliad Bookstore. I also love the Lest Bookshop, which is in downtown Los Angeles. I order online sometimes from different outlets. I don't tend to have any particular bias. I generally really go after a specific edition, and so once I find it, very often on eBay you can find very well kept, sometimes new editions, and so that's one of my to-go places. Number 9, what is your reading process? Oh God, all over the place, completely all over the place. I I read while I'm commuting, I read while I'm at home, before going to sleep. There is no structure, no order. I also listen to audiobooks because I take my dogs for walks and I try to use that time to listen to audiobooks. Sometimes I even read a book, like for example, recently I've done a buddy read with Noah of the channel Everyone Who Reads Must Converse. We read The Broom of the System by David Foster Wallace, which I enjoyed very much. And for that book, I had the physical copy, so whenever I could, I was reading the physical copy. But at the same time, I found the audiobook copy for free at the LA library. If you don't happen to know this, there is an app called Overdrive that allows you to download all of your audiobooks for free if your town's library has a lot of choice in audiobooks. So Overdrive is what I use to listen to audiobooks. That only skims the surface of my reading process. I would add also the fact that I tend to not like to read ebooks very much. Old-fashioned maybe. Maybe I just like to hold the book in my hands. But then audiobooks are fine for me. It's just the ebook doesn't quite work very well with what I'm used to. Number 10. How do you use what you read? How do I use what I read? For the most part, if it's fiction, if it's enjoyable fiction like science fiction or novels, literature, I guess the right way to answer this question would be I use it in everything in my life, but especially in my communication, trying to be a little bit more articulate, especially in English because it's not my mother tongue. So that's a big part of it. But also when I'm reading in Italian, I use the fiction that I read automatically without really thinking about it, but I'm still using it because I feel, especially in a period of time when I'm reading more often during the day than other days. So for example, if I'm reading for some reason 4 hours every day or 5 hours even every day, maybe on vacation, holiday, etc., I can feel that my imagination and the quickness of the way my brain is picking up words, is choosing words and is choosing examples and images is increased because of this exercise that is doing constantly. So this is certainly a way I'm using it. How I'm using non-fiction books, that's like everyone else, to connect the notions the very few notions that stick to my memory from a non-fiction book to everything else that stuck to my memory until now, which is not a lot. I don't have an extremely great memory, kind of, I would say, moderate, average type of memory, and And I like to think I use it in an interconnected way. That's how I'm thinking of the non-fiction books that I love to read. Number 11, if you could download a book to your brain, would you still read? Oh my, well, yeah, I'm open-minded like that. I would probably do it, as long as I can still read books, physical books, because as I said before, I would not get away from them, and I don't think they will ever disappear. Number 12, what are your views on rereading a book? Absolutely love rereading. And I think Brandon made actually a really, really good point about this question in his video, where he said rereading, especially as we all are getting younger and years go by, allows you to track and monitor your personal growth, your personal development as a person in a very detailed way. One example for me is Crime and Punishment, a fantastic work of literature that I read in probably 92 or 93 for the first time, and then I reread this year in 2021. So it was almost shocking to see how almost every chapter, I remembered while I was rereading it, what my thoughts were in the moment when I read it, what my reactions were, what my thoughts were, and it was almost having in front of me the ghost of myself as a teenager. And of course, it was not a great sight because in hindsight, you always look at yourself as, oh, come on, you were so stupid. But it's normal. It's normal, and it makes you feel good, especially if in your life you had the blessing to actually be able to develop, to grow, and to mature, because not everybody does it. Number 13, what makes a book good? And also 14, what makes a book bad? It's not easy to answer these two questions, and I noticed how Brandon also himself wanted to give it a personal, kind of customized answer. For me, in general, a good book is any book that I could say that has given me something, but in a deep way. So it's giving me something as I very often go back to the example of meeting somebody at a bar, in a bar or in a restaurant, and have dinner together, or maybe even have a quick drink, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, with somebody whom you didn't know before. So you share, you mainly listen what this person has to tell you, and then you say goodbye, and everybody goes their own way. If I'm walking away from this bar and I'm feeling like, I couldn't wait to get away, I feel like I'm almost wasted my time, and that happens sometimes, that's a bad book. If I walk away and I'm sorry to walk away, I feel like actually continuing to talk with this person, continuing this connection that was created between the book and the author and myself, then it's a really good book. My personal pet peeve, or I don't know if it's a pet peeve is the right definition, but something that I really love to do is with authors who are not extremely famous, because the extremely famous authors are impossible to track down, but authors who are medium level kind of famous or not very known. If I really like the book, I immediately after finishing the good book, I will try to contact them. I don't care how, via Instagram, LinkedIn, email, Facebook, but even just to say thank you or congratulations, your book, I felt like it enriched me, it made me, and I've noticed how this makes a huge difference for especially not very famous authors, because we sometimes think that only because somebody has an editor or a publisher, they will receive so much feedback, but it's not necessarily the case. So it's a very good way to, of course, I know that I'm a communicative person, so I love to communicate, and that's something that I do automatically, but I would encourage anybody to do that, because you make the world a better place just by doing this. if you think the book is good and you loved it. Question number 15. How do you feel about not finishing a book? I'm okay with not finishing a book because some books don't deserve our time. Number 16. Should the author's personal life matter at all? No, not really. Not really. At least not for what concerns the enjoyment of the work of art that is the book itself, if we're talking about fiction especially. But even with non-fiction, it does matter, of course, if there's bias, if there's a political background, that does matter. But if the question is, does your willingness to read the book change, or even does the perception of the book change only because you know about the personal life of the author, then in general my answer is no, that does not and should not really change. Number 17. If you could only read one genre for the rest of your time, what would it be? Well, with me that would be Christian theology, because that's my nurturing genre, let's say. When in the Our Father we say, give us our daily bread, that bread means nurturing words, the Word of God, so theology and reflections upon the Word of God. 18. Do you ever read a book without knowing anything about it? Yes, very often. And as I mentioned, very often because I love the cover, I love the title, and I'm attracted to it without any reason, knowing that it's completely irrational. Number 19. What author, genre, series of culture can you just not get into, and why? Okay, this is YA for me. And it's not that I haven't tried. I have tried a good number of young adult books. I hated them all very intensely. And I constantly wonder why people would go and to the wine shop and order a glass of wine with a double portion of water in it to dilute the wine instead of simply drinking wine. I cannot understand that. Number 20. Do you think everyone should read, and why? In general, yes, I do, but there is a risk in this question, which is the elitism or sense of superiority, of thinking I read a lot and only me and people who read a lot are the worthy people in the world. Everybody else is inferior. That's not true. It's simply not true. The way we exchange information in the world changes. We exchange information by talking a lot, and a lot of very intelligent, very rich inside, and humble role model type of people read very little or have read very little. So, or maybe even never, we could say. So everyone should read as a general kind of high-level rule, yes, because it's good to be informed and to be articulate, etc. But really, I think at the end of the day, my answer to this question should be no. If we are trying to separate groups of people in the society from a qualitative point of view. Okay, that's all. I made it through all the 20 questions. Thanks so much again, Brandon, for creating this, and I hope you enjoyed some of my answers. Thanks again.